Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere as always. We're on Twitter at BobbyFantasyPro and at Mike Tagliere NFL. Tags, what's going on, man?
Dude, it's one of those days. These days happen every now and then, and the day I'm talking about is where I get into Twitter wars, and I just get overly sensitive about a player that I'm highly invested in, and today it just happens to be Amari Cooper. I don't know. It's just I got so tired of watching people sit here and tell me that Amari Cooper's not good, and I'm like, are you really going to pretend that this guy didn't finish as a top 24 receiver when he was 21 and 22 years old, and now he has one down year, and all of a sudden he sucks at football? I mean, I've seriously been defending him all morning, and I'm going to continue to do that, guys, because I'll tell you this: when you watch as much football as I do, and you come across someone like me with Amari Cooper, where I watch him and I believe he's a special talent, and when you find someone that's going to get opportunity combined with that special talent, I invest in them, and I'm okay dying on that hill, because sometimes talent unfortunately doesn't always come out in certain situations, but I will bet on it more often than not.
I never get in Twitter fights either. Like, people are always telling me, like, go burn myself and die and stuff like that for having a take that they disagree with. But, I'm sick and I didn't sleep very well last night. So I've been getting in Twitter fights this morning, too. It's going to be a feisty podcast. By the way, pardon my voice today. But we're talking about football gives me energy. So let's do this. Our guest today has perfect hair. He's an Emmy Award-winning sports journalist, James Koh. You can find him on Twitter at James D. Koh. That's Koh. James, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, man, anytime I can, I will. I love the podcast, and I love the product you guys put on.
So here's what we have planned for today, guys. We're going to play over-under, where one of us gives a stat line. The other two say if they think the player is going to finish over or under that stat line. Then we've got some great listener mailbag questions to discuss. First, though, I want to tell you about one of the sponsors of today's show, Draft.com. I just heard that Draft has reached 500,000 full leagues this season, which is incredible. For those of you who don't know, it's DFS, where you live draft a roster every week. They do it for baseball, football, basketball, whatever. Or right now, they have these awesome best ball leagues going on for NFL where you draft a full 18-player roster for the whole season. No trades, waiver wire, or even setting lineups. There's so much strategy involved in these type of leagues, and I'll bet Tags and I have both done 50 by now. If you want to try it, deposit draft.com/pros, and you'll get a free $3 entry plus money back guarantee up to $100 if you don't like their service. Again, that's draft.com/pros. By the way, Tags, did you see our Best Ball Live Draft podcast is up on YouTube now?
I did.
Yeah, so we've been rolling out a lot of videos on youtube.com/fantasypros starting this season. And the newest one is our screens and videos as we're doing the draft.com Best Ball podcast that you remember. So you can all check that out if you want to see Tags getting sniped left and right and me being really mad at Vanilla Wilt. Actually, I don't think Vanilla Wilt was in that one. Maybe it was Dirty Randy.
You do yell quite a few times. I actually checked out the preview of that because it's really good. Our video editor has been doing some magic, and I was looking at that, and Bobby yells more often than. And you can also see his attempt at growing a beard. It's quite funny.
Oh, dude, that's just not shaving after like 2 hours. See, I'm really manly, and I shave like in between every article I write. Okay, guys, I've had a bunch of people asking me when we were going to play Does Tags Know Everything again, and it's been long enough, and I wanted to save it for when James came on the podcast because, I remember, James, correct me if I'm wrong, you weren't able to find Chicago on TV once on a map. Is that right?
It wasn't on TV. It was during a podcast.
Okay.
And we were like live streaming it at the time, and we took video, and I was sweating bullets. You know that Key and Peele gif where, I think it's Key is just sweating profusely.
Yes.
That was me trying to find Chicago on a map, man. It was I don't know what it is, but everyone's got like that knowledge blind spot. Geography is my knowledge blind spot, man. I am an absolute idiot when it comes to geography for whatever reason.
I think for Tags and I, it's pop culture for both of it. But anyway, we know Tags and James know everything about fantasy football, but here's the question to determine if they actually know everything about everything else too. New York City has 780 skyscrapers, which is defined as a building 100 meters or higher. What city in the world has the most? Tags, I'll let you go first.
What city in the world has the most?
The most skyscrapers.
I would have said New York.
Well, you still can if you want to.
I And well, the way that you're putting this question together, it makes me feel like I'm an idiot. But I'm sticking to New York, man. I'm not gonna veer outside of what I know. I know it's bigger than Chicago because when I live in Chicago and it's a big city, but when you go to New York, it's like 4 times Chicago. Like legitimately, it's a massive city. And I've never been anywhere with more skyscrapers. So
I could be tricking you and just it is New York City. So what do you think, James? Is it New York City or do you have something else in mind?
Man, I'm gonna go off menu and say, what's the capital of Singapore?
Nobody knows, man.
I don't know. I'll go with that one.
I have no idea, man, but that's not the answer. The real answer is Hong Kong, which has 4 times more skyscrapers than New York, over 3,200, which just blew my mind. That's why I wanted to share it. Isn't that amazing, man? 4 times as many as New York City.
I do want to say that I have not traveled internationally nearly as much as I would like, which includes trips to like Mexico. I've gone there, but I've never gone over to like Italy. I've never been to Hong Kong, China, none of those places. So I want to go. But that is madness. I thought this question was limited to the U.S.
No, I said the whole world. So I guess part of knowing everything is you have to listen to the
that's
questions.
me not listening. But that's hey, you learn something new every day, and now I know that. Wow, that's kind of crazy though.
By the way, Chicago's number 2, Miami's number 3, which surprised me in the United States, and Los Angeles 7th in the United States. I guess that's because of earthquakes. I was going to say hurricanes. I guess it's because of earthquakes. I don't know.
Wow, that's crazy.
Well, it's also really spread out. I mean, there's really not that many, super, super tall buildings in downtown.
All right, guys, on to the football where Tags and James clearly know a lot more. Let's start with the over-under segment. I'm going to start us off here. I was talking about Amari Cooper, by the way, Tags. I just saw he's up to 225 pounds. Over or under, Cooper sees 1,000 receiving yards this season. James, we'll let you go first.
I will say over. Mostly because I'm not sure who else is going to be there catching a whole hell of a lot of footballs. I know John Gruden wants to go to more of a power scheme. They're going to run the ball a hell of a lot more, and they have the personnel to do it. Love the offensive line. They have the talent, at least on the offensive line. Will they gel? That's the big question mark. Marshawn Lynch is certainly going to pound the rock. Doug Martin is there as well. But other than Amari Cooper, I know Jordy Nelson is there, and I really like him as a sleeper this year. And because I think a lot of folks are I think a lot of people are really, really down on Jordy Nelson. And I just kind of feel like he's got the skill set where he might vibe with Derek Carr, just with the clean route running and whatever it might be. And if he's seeing secondary defenders, that's not bad. But I tell you what, man, Amari Cooper, 1,000 yards, lock him up. He's still going to be the primary passing option there in Oakland.
I mean, remember, he played 12 games last year, and so everyone thinks he had a horrible season. He had 7 touchdowns, 700 yards. Like, that's not a bad season for 12 games. And then the 2 seasons prior to that, 21 years old, 1,000 yards, 22 years old, 1,100 yards. Tags, this is a lock for you, right?
Yeah, I actually had one on Amari Cooper in here, and mine was actually over-under on 130 targets. So I would think that 1,000 yards is being, I think it's low in terms of what I would expect out of him this year. We do expect, a lot of people are talking about John Gruden and how they expect him to go with that power scheme. But the thing is, if you go back and look at John Gruden's last 8 coached teams, like the last 8 times that he's coached a team, none of them ranked top 10 in rushing attempts. So I don't know where John Gruden's getting this whole, I'm bringing it back to how I used to coach, man. He's not. He never did that. And that's the thing. He's never been like this big run guy. He has, however, talked about Amari Cooper being a guy that can catch 110 passes in a season. I'm not expecting 110 passes. But I watched an interview with him actually earlier today on NFL Network. He was saying that he believes Amari has a 100 reception season in him, that they're going to use him like Sterling Sharp was used when Gruden was coaching in Green Bay. Sterling Sharp, guys, he had 4 seasons of more than 90 receptions. So these are high comparisons, and ever since Gruden's gotten to Oakland, he's talked about Amari Cooper, and he's saying that he's basically going to be the focal point of the offense, and I actually believe that because, again, I believe he is a special talent. So my over-under for you guys is 130 targets.
He had that the first 2 seasons of his career. Why not? I mean, if he stays healthy, sure. I mean, Michael Crabtree's gone, right, James?
130 targets that's a bit rich for me. I mean, I kind of look at the target totals from last year and they were down. I mean, we're only talking about a handful of guys maybe that got over 130 targets. So For me, that's pretty high. I probably project him somewhere in that 110 to 120, and I think 120 is he's probably going to max out at 120. I got him around 100 to 110 targets, but I'm hoping that his average depth of target will be pretty deep. Derek Carr, we know, has a pretty live arm, and keep in mind too, he was banged up last year. You know what I mean? So hopefully another offseason of health for him. Again, I go back to the talent on the offensive line. If they can keep him clean in that pocket, I think Amari Cooper, even with 110, 115 targets, will certainly exceed 1,000 receiving yards.
Yeah, Derek Carr had, 2 or 3 injuries last year that he was battling through. So if he's healthy this year, I mean, remember, people were drafting him as like the number 5 quarterback last year. I'm not saying he's that. I'm just saying he's a lot better than people remember if he's healthy. Now, I'm looking at our consensus projections. You can go to just hover over NFL. It's right down there, third one from the top, projections. If you click on that, you can see our consensus projections, which come from 4 sources. So you can see, not just what one site thinks, but all of them think together. And you've got Amari Cooper at 77.7 receptions. Now, that's what he averaged in his first 2 years, where he averaged 77.5, and he did that with 130 targets. So I'm thinking, based on these 4 sources, they're saying that he's going to have about 130 targets. That's a lot of targets, guys.
Yeah, I think the ceiling's actually higher than that. And I'm being honest. And if you talk about the reason why is that I understand they want to run the ball, but it goes back to the whole Seattle thing where, if your defense isn't keeping the other teams out of the end zone, you're not going to be able to run the ball as much as you want. And I mean, looking last year, it was funny in that interview with John Gruden, they go, what are you going to do about Khalil Mack? You need the defense to step forward and, stop some teams, right? And he goes, well, we didn't stop anybody last year with Khalil Mack. So it was kind of like a shot at Khalil Mack, like a little low-key shot at him. But they do need to get him back on the field. And if he's not back, if he's like a legit holdout, this defense is going to be not very good. Like Arden Key, expecting him to fill that role. No. So I think Amari Cooper, again, he's someone that I'll draft as a wide receiver too this year. I do believe the targets are there. And if he does see that 130 targets, there's only been 5 wide receivers. So there's been 82. So overall, over the last 5 years, there's been 82 wide receivers who have seen 130 or more targets. The stat here is that there's only been 5 who have finished outside the top 28 wide receivers. So essentially, Amari Cooper's floor, I would say, I think it'd be safe to say wide receiver 28, but he's being drafted around that wide receiver 18 to 20 range. So I think his ADP is kind of where it should be, but there is upside for top 10 potential there.
By the way, when you hear these terms, ADP, or we'll say ECR later in the show, ADP stands for average draft position. You can find, again, consensus average draft position from all the sites on our website. If you just go to ADP, if you go to ECR, that's expert consensus rankings. So we take 70 experts, merge all their rankings together, and you can see what the experts as a whole think about it as compared to the general public. So James, why don't we move on to you for the next over-under here?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a situation where I'm looking at Nuke Hopkins, and he's a wide receiver where it's going to be extremely obviously tied to the health of his quarterback, Deshaun Watson. Last year, this is a guy that led the league in targets with 174 targets, had 96 receptions, and 1,378 receiving yards. For me, I look at the target total. 150 targets, over under 150.
I will go over 150. I think he's one of those players in the league where he's just even though they added Kiki QT and that Will Fuller is going to be healthy for we have to assume that he's going to be healthy for the whole season. I do think we see those target numbers come back, but it's still hard to see DeAndre Hopkins be targeted less than 9-10 times a game on average. And when you saw Deshaun Watson in there, he was targeting him relentlessly. So yeah, Hopkins, I think they learned their lesson here. It's just they realize he's the bread and butter. Even when he is covered, he's not covered because he's one of the best at controlling his body, especially in the red zone. So I actually would project him around 155, like 160, right in that range. So I do see a dip in targets, but I do think that they continue to go to him. So it's a good mark, though.
I'm going higher than that, man. I'm going higher than 160. I mean, look at his last 3 years, 192, 151, 174. He's as durable as they come, too. This is a guy who maybe he hasn't reached the prime of his career. I'm not saying he's going to catch, 15 touchdowns this season. It's possible. He's probably going to go back down to 8 or 9. But with that, he's going to get 160, 170 targets.
Yeah, no, and it's fair. I just don't think that this in terms of the offense, they threw a lot more than they have in years past last year, and that was because their defense was shot without J.J. Watt, and their secondary was atrocious down the stretch. So getting some players back from injuries, I would assume that their defense will take a step forward. And again, adding Kiki QT, he's the best number 3 wide receiver they've had there in quite some time, and Will Fuller being back in the lineup full time, I think it's going to cancel out some of those targets. But he's a safe player. Again, I have no issue with projecting him for 160, but I wouldn't expect last year's numbers, considering we're going to see a slight dip in volume. And the efficiency, obviously, last year was crazy high, considering the touchdown totals that Deshaun Watson was doing. But sticking with the touchdowns, though, my over-under for you guys is Devontae Adams, 9.5 touchdowns, over-under.
Oh, man. I mean, Aaron Rodgers has to throw a ton of touchdowns, right? He's going to throw 30 plus, maybe 35, maybe even 40. And Adams is their main red zone target. I guess you could say Jimmy Graham, but Rodgers doesn't throw the ball to tight ends very often, even when he's had some good ones. So I don't know if Jimmy Graham is that anymore. I'm going to go over, but 9.5 is a good number.
Man, 9.5 is a really good number. I will take the over on that, even though, you take a look back at 2017 and there was only, believe it or not, man, there was only, 3 guys that had double-digit receiving touchdowns. It was DeAndre Hopkins, Davante Adams had 10, and then Jimmy Graham had 10 as well. So, yeah, I think he enters camp this year as the clear-cut number 1 wide receiver. I think last year was still a question of, okay, Davante Adams is there, Jordy Nelson is there. Are they going to be a 1A, 1B tandem? What's going to happen in the run game? Obviously, that question has not cleared up from 2017 to 2018. But, man, I look at that offense, and for whatever reason, there's a lot of good press clippings and a lot of hype. Obviously, a lot of it has to do with the right arm of Aaron Rodgers, but being the focal point of that passing offense, hard not to see Davante Adams, if he stays healthy, getting double-digit touchdowns.
Yeah. What do you think, Tags?
That's where I'm at. I actually would say over on this as well when looking at the targets around there. But my only concern is that even halfway through last year was that Davante Adams started to be the guy. Like Xavier Rhodes shadowed him instead of Jordy Nelson. And does that happen in 2018 where it's like he's shadowed more often by some of these top-tier cornerbacks, and because of that Aaron Rodgers looks elsewhere? I don't know. But for me, I'm still willing to draft him as a top 6 wide receiver. I had him as high as number 4, and I've slowly backed down a little bit just because I think that Michael Thomas is a safer receiver to draft than Davante Adams. But at the same time, Davante Adams in standard leagues, he's going to score 10 touchdowns. Like that, I think that's going to happen. If you look at the last 22 games that he's played with Aaron Rodgers, he has scored 17 touchdowns. Like that's
amazing.
That's stupid good. Like I don't think you could ever bet on someone to score 10 touchdowns, but if I was going to say someone was going to get the over, I'd say Davante Adams for sure.
Sticking with the really good wide receivers here, here's a player we haven't talked about all that much is Mike Evans. So we already talked about DeAndre Hopkins, how well he started his career. He's one of only 7 players with at least 3,500 receiving yards in his first 3 years. Here's the others: Jerry Rice, Torrey Holt, AJ Green, Odell Beckham, Randy Moss, and Mike Evans. So over under, Mike Evans gets 80 receptions and 1,000 receiving yards. I don't know what to make of him. Like, this is why I want to ask about it, because I want to pick your guys' brains.
The reason I think we're all so hesitant is because we don't know what that Tampa offense is going to look like. Jameis Winston being suspended, whatever it might be. And quite frankly...
And when he comes back, is he going to play?
Is he going to be the guy? Who knows? You know what I mean? And the other thing about it, too, is Mike Evans himself has been a pretty up and down player when it comes to fantasy. I think he's still been fabulous in real life, regardless. But I think in fantasy, he's been relatively up and down. So... he is a player that is confounding to me, man, because obviously the talent is there. He is, if he's right and the offense has some semblance of efficiency, he's a double-digit touchdown guy. You can lock it up. But I've lost all faith in Dirk Cutter. I think the Tampa offense will sputter yet again in 2018. He's on the hot seat, Dirk Cutter is. I would actually be surprised if he finishes the year out, because that's how bad I think he lost that team last year. So give me those projections again. Let me see what I can do.
80 receptions, and 1,000 receiving yards. Just to give you an idea, over the last 2 years, he has 167 receptions, so over 80 per year, and he has 2,300 receiving yards, 17 touchdowns.
I will go under on the receptions, but
Okay.
I will go over on the receiving yards.
Me too. Yep, same for me.
Yeah, I would actually agree with both of you guys on that one. I do think he goes over 1,000 yards. But the thing is like, so the reason that people are having a tough time projecting Mike Evans going into 2018 is because there's a lot of variables here, right? You mentioned Dirk Cutter. Him and Adam Gase are both the top dogs in terms of like who's going to get fired first. Hugh Jackson should have been fired already, but that's a conversation for a different day. But so on top of that, we also have the Ryan Fitzpatrick thing. Ryan Fitzpatrick has been Jekyll and Hyde. You know, you look at him last year and he wasn't supporting Mike Evans as a top wide receiver, but if you go back to him with the 2015 Jets with Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker, he supported 2 top 24 wide receivers every single week. We don't know what we're getting with Mike Evans on a year-to-year basis. He's got 2 years with 12 touchdowns. He's got 2 years with 3 and 5. There's so much Jekyll and Hyde here, but the reason that I'm expecting a little kind of in between here is that there's so much talent around Mike Evans now. With Deshaun Jackson, with Chris Godwin, with O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate, they added Ronald Jones to the offense.
Well, Peyton Barber is going to start, didn't he? Here?
Oh, shut up. Don't bring up Peyton Barber.
That is so stupid. No way.
You will be fired on the spot, Bobby. But no, seriously, Mike Evans, he's a really tough one to project, and I don't think anybody can really wrap their mind around, what to expect. But we have seen top 12 wide receiver upside before. We know that he probably has a top 5 ceiling, but at the same time,
he finished number 1 2 years ago. He went wide receiver 27, wide receiver number 1, wide receiver 18.
I would rather bet. I'm getting to the point now where I had Evans over Doug Baldwin, but I'm actually like torn between those two. I have them in the same tier. But if I wanted safety on my team, I'd be drafting Doug Baldwin over Mike Evans. And by the way, Mike Evans' yards per target, these are his target, like over the years. Starting his rookie year was 8.5, down to 8.1, down to 7.6, and then last year 7.4. So it's decreased every single year. So he's getting less efficient with those targets, despite the talent being brought in around him. So I just don't think Mike Evans is like a Julio Jones type talent, where it's like you give him the targets, or even DeAndre Hopkins. I don't think he's that guy. I think he's just a big target. He is a physical specimen, but I just don't think he's the most athletically gifted wide receiver.
All right, James, we're going to get to your second one in just a second, but first I want to talk about TeamStake.com, another one of the sponsors of today's show. If you're tired of hassling friends and family for fantasy league entry fees, try TeamStake.com. TeamStake provides fantasy sports leagues with a fully customizable payment, collection, and payout distribution system at no charge. It's completely free to use. TeamStake does not take a percentage from the pot, require subscription, or charge any fees to use their service. Free payment and payout options for all leagues, safe and secure transactions, professional safekeeping of league funds. They've got optional late fees to help convince league members to pay on time. They've got so many things that are useful to you, and like I said, it is completely free to use. Check out teamstake.com. That's STAKE. All right, James, what's your number 2 here?
I've always had questions about Jordan Howard, and I'd love to get your takes on it. But last year, this is a guy that in a terrible offense, and obviously they gave him the ball a lot, but in a terrible offense had just about 1,250 total yards, 1,100 on the ground. He had nine total touchdowns as well. Here's my question: 1,250 on the total yards, and we'll set the over/under on the total touchdowns at 9.5. Over under 1,250, over under 9.5.
I can answer this right now because I literally just wrote up his player profile. It was last Friday. I wrote it up, and it'll be published this week sometime. I have him over on the yardage. I have him right at about 1,350 total yards, but I have him as 8 total touchdowns. Howard, one of the fun facts that I have about him is that he's run for 2,435 yards while playing for John Fox in this vanilla offense over the last 2 years. Again, rookie and second year in his contract.
Wow.
Just how
he didn't even start his rookie year either.
That's what I'm saying. He didn't take over, I think it was week 3, week 4, where Jeremy Langford got hurt. So, fun fact, he has more rushing yards over the last 2 years than LaShawn McCoy, Todd Gurley, Mark Ingram, and Melvin Gordon. In fact, there are just 2 running backs who have more rushing yards than him. Ezekiel Elliott and Le'Veon Bell, players who are being taken in the top 3 picks. So,
wow, man.
Yeah, taking away John Fox, adding in Matt Nagy, and if you're worried about Tariq Cohen, I kind of dug through NFL's next-gen stats, and Tariq Cohen was a very inefficient running back in terms of how many yards he traveled in order to gain 1 yard. He was actually the worst in the NFL. So I'm going to dispel that notion. I'm going to say that Jordan Howard, love the yardage. The touchdowns I have at 8, so I could see it definitely going over that, James, but I definitely think the yardage will be over.
I've been slowly moving Howard back up in my rankings because the more I look at it, the more I think they're just going to turn him into a pass catcher. I know he doesn't have the best hands, but he still caught, 30 balls last year, 35 balls last year? So I think he catches a little bit more this year. Cohen's still going to be a part of the offense. I think they throw him more, so I'm going under on the yards. I've got his touchdowns at 8, too, so I'm going under there, but I like Jordan Howard this year.
For me, it's a situation where I cannot possibly see them incorporating him into the passing offense. You talk about, he's gotten, a certain amount of receptions or whatever it might have been. And they were force feeding him a lot of these receptions. He has one of the worst drop rates among any player, but especially among running backs. I think per target, he drops 15% of the targets thrown his way.
Are you kidding me? That is horrible. That's like a dad in backyard football.
Those are drops, my friend. Those are drops. Those are not catchable passes or whatever. Those are just straight up drops. And it's horrendous, that rate. And he's never been a pass catcher, not in college, obviously not in the pros as well. I know he's been working on it, but unless we see just a massive improvement this offseason, and there's not a whole hell of a lot of evidence that we are going to see that, you got to think that Cohen is going to be the pass catching option on passing downs. Now, that being said, I'd love to see both of them on the field at the same time. Why the hell not? Why the hell not? You got to keep the defense honest, and you got to let them think about more than just one thing. If you see just Tariq Cohen back there, you're thinking, all right, great, these guys are passing. If you see just Jordan Howard back there, that's like, all right, well, there's a strong possibility that they're going to have to run, and we definitely don't need to account for Jordan Howard out of the backfield. So let's just have that linebacker roam. So I think having them both on the field certainly will confound defenses as well. So that's kind of what I'd like to see in 2018. And I'm sure Matt Nagy and the boys there will incorporate more 2-back sets.
All right, so here's my next one, guys. And here's another player we haven't talked about all that much because for Tags and I, it's Gurley Bell Elliott. And, Barkley is in the conversation as well. David Johnson's in the conversation as well. But here's my over-under, okay? David Johnson over or under 1,800 yards from scrimmage.
That's a good number.
That's a big number. I'm going to say
that's
under.
A huge number. That's why I'm saying it.
The thing is, I'm going to say under mostly because I think the Arizona offense is going to be absolute trash. I don't see anyone there that can stretch the field. I know they drafted Christian Kirk, but, again, a rookie that a bit undersized as well. I like the speed. I like the player overall, but he's not going to be a reliable field stretcher, right? So they've got Larry Fitzgerald, ageless wonder, beating father time as we currently see it today. That's another guy that's going to be great for the skill set of both Sam Bradford and Josh Rosen. The fact that they can pound the middle to intermediate part of the field with a reliable pass catcher like Larry Fitzgerald, that's good. Now, that being said, man, there's going to be a lot of bad matchups out there for the Arizona Cardinals. And quite frankly, other than DJ, who's an explosive player in this offense? I don't see one. I think their offensive line is still in transition. And again, they're going to be possibly transitioning from Sam Bradford to Josh Rosen. That transition always is a rocky one to begin. So this is an offense. I just don't see them piling up points. I don't see them piling up touchdowns. I definitely don't see them piling up yards either. So 1,700, what was it? 1,800 for DJ. I'll take the hard under on that one.
He had 2,100 the last time he was healthy, and they upgraded at quarterback with Sam Bradford. I understand they don't have many weapons, but that's why I think he gets 370 touches again. Tags, where are you on David Johnson? I don't know on this.
Well, the coaching change is going to, I think it does lean towards David Johnson. I think a defensive-minded coach typically comes in and wants to run the ball. So I do think that I have David Johnson right now projected for 1,835. So it's very close. I think the number's good. And some people have said I'm too low on David Johnson this year. But the reason,
wow.
but the reason I'm low, the reason I say I'm too low is because I don't have him scoring many touchdowns. touchdowns. I think that the touchdowns are going to be hard.
Well, he's not going to score 20 again. I mean, what's up with these people taking him first over Todd Gurley and Le'Veon Bell? Are you serious?
I have no idea why you would take him over those guys. I have no idea. I mean, I understand you want to go back and you have the nostalgia of his 2016 season. It was one season. Again, I mean, I'm David Johnson is extremely talented, but the team he plays on,
Peyton Hillis was awesome for one season.
the team he plays on is not good. I mean, do not compare David Johnson to Peyton Hillis. Don't.
Okay, yeah, that. I'm just saying. I'm not comparing the two. I'm just saying, like, if you're using that argument, you could have used the argument for Hillis too. Totally different players.
Bobby, I'm just trying to protect you, man. But
thanks.
But seriously, David Johnson, I have no issue with people taking him over Ezekiel Elliott because I think they're both on bad offenses. Ezekiel Elliott has a better offensive line, but David Johnson's a better pass catcher. The reason I take Saquon Barkley, I think, over both of them is because they did upgrade their line in New York. It's kind of like in between. I think their offense is going to be a lot better than people think. And Saquon Barkley, they just invested the number 2 overall pick. They're talking about Hall of Fame with this kid. They're saying, we're taking a player who we expect to be in the Hall of Fame. When they say that, they're going to give him the ball a ton. The offense has more upside than Arizona's does, and that's why I'm saying, like, you're guaranteed touches with all these guys. Why not take the one who's got the most upside in his offense?
Can we go back here for a second? So Zeke right now is a clear-cut top 5 pick. You're saying, and DJ too, pretty much in that class. So he's either going 4, 5, or 6. You're saying you would take Saquon over both of those guys, meaning you would take Saquon with a top 5 pick.
I would, yes. I've actually drafted him as a top 5 pick multiple times. And the thing is, so I do enough best ball drafts where it's like I try and vary up my strategies and like I don't want to be overexposed to one player. But if I had Barkley fall to me at 6, I'm ecstatic. Sometimes I would take Antonio Brown instead of taking Barkley. But I really just don't have much faith in David Johnson and Ezekiel Elliott to produce more than what you're spending there. Like they don't have, in my opinion, they don't have RB1 upside in 2018 just because
RB number 1 overall, not RB1 as in like top 12. Yeah.
Number 1 overall player, and which is, that's what you're hoping to get. I'm not saying they're bad players. I'm not. And don't
right.
Their offenses just limit their upside. That's basically what it comes down to. I think that David Johnson is capped at like 12 touchdowns. And it's not to say that's a bad season. Again, I have him as my RB4 in PPR leagues. It's right behind Barkley. Ezekiel Elliott is right there. Those top 5, interchange the 3. You could interchange Barkley, Johnson, and Elliott. I'm just putting Barkley ahead of those guys because I believe his offense has much more potential.
How interesting. Yeah, I think I agree with you. The offense is much better, and people are sleeping on that offensive line in New York because it was so bad in 2017 that the stink of it, the taste of it is still lingering here in 2018. But man, they have addressed it considerably. You're right. I love the offensive line for the New York Giants, but I think it's a double-edged sword when you talk about a better offense because those other 2 guys are clearly going to be the focal points. Whereas in New York, you still got Odell, you still got Sterling Shepard, you still got Evan Engram. When you get into that red zone, because you're so multiple, I do kind of wonder, is Saquon going to get that volume, especially around the red zone?
And I don't know. That's the thing is I don't even know if Saquon is the best goal line back. I think that he's the type of player who can break off a long run like outside the red zone, like where you're going to see him break off, 4 or 5 touchdown runs outside the 20. I think that's going to happen with Barkley. Whereas, Zeke, I'm not saying he's not a big play guy either. Zeke has never played without Des Bryant on the field there, taking away at least a little bit of attention. The thing is, the Cowboys, that's what concerns me about Zeke, is the offensive line is studly. I think it might be the best in the NFL. Adding Connor Williams was huge. So, I love that offensive line, but I want to know, legitimately, if you're a defensive coordinator going against the Cowboys, how often do you stick 8+ defenders in the box? Me, personally, it's going to be over 60% of the time.
I think it's going to be 100% of the time. I would literally force...
Yeah, as much as they did with Fournette last year. When they started doing that with Fournette, it killed Fournette.
And I love Dak Prescott overall from a talent perspective, but if you're telling me I got to stick 8-9 guys in the box and play single coverage outside and force Dak Prescott to squeeze a throw, yeah, sign me up for that all day long.
Yep, don't let Ezekiel Elliott beat you because he will. If you match up defender for defender, their offensive line will overtake you. So again, I understand why people want to take Johnson Elliott. They've seen him do it before. They've been in the league. I get that stuff. I really do, guys. But just because a player performed last year doesn't mean they're going to perform this year. And with running backs, we're chasing volume. And we know that these 3 running backs are going to get tons of it. So again, I have no issue if you tell me you want to take one of those guys over Barkley. It's just me personally. When Pat Shurmur comes to New York, that's the biggest thing for me. Is Pat Shurmur? If you remember the Vikings 2 years ago, did anybody want to go there to invest fantasy options? No. All of a sudden, you have people willing to invest a top 10 pick in Dalvin Cook. You have a two top 12, 15 wide receivers in Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. You have a top 8 tight end, Kyle Rudolph. You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, people are gaga over the Vikings. Who did that? Pat Shurmur did that when Norv Turner quit.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's a good point, man. And I think the moral of the story here is take all these guys over Alvin Kamara, who might get 175 rushes, right?
Well, actually, that's one of my over-under for you guys.
Okay, yeah. Let's finish it off with this one, man.
I swear to God, Alvin Kamara, 250 total touches.
250 total touches.
I'm going to go over 250, but barely. I mean, that's a full 120 lower than all these other guys we're talking about.
Yeah, Kamara had 201 last year as a gauge.
Okay, so he had 120 rushes and 81 receptions last year. That is bananas. I will say this. You got to keep in mind, too, the first month of the season, he was barely utilized as they were trying to figure out a 3-man rotation with Ingram, Peterson, and Kamara. Now we know for the first month of the season how the tides have turned, right? So instead of a 3-headed rotation last year, now they got a rotation of 1, maybe 2 guys. And the other 2 guys, and the other guy, Boston, who knows who the second guy's going to be?
Terrence West, baby.
Terrence West, Boston Scott. I don't know. But we do know that Alvin Kamara is going to see volume. And I know that they probably they're not going to hand it off to him, 30 times and say, hey, go make a play, kid. But that being said, I think they'll find a variety of ways to get him touches. 200 touches last year. And I'm sorry, what was the over-under for this year?
250.
250. Man, that's a great number. That is a great number because I think the reception totals will go down. But that being said, I do think the total number of rushes will go up. Man, I'm going to go under, but just barely. Just barely. I think 225 to 250 sounds like an awfully good number for Alvin Kamara in 2018.
And there's people taking Alvin Kamara over guys like Leonard Fournette, Saquon Barkley, Dalvin Cook, who are all going to get more carries than Kamara will get even touches. That doesn't even include the receptions.
It's true.
Yeah, receptions are obviously worth more than carries are, so you have to factor all that stuff in. Kamara, if he gets up to 250 touches, the built-in regression that he's going to have, I think, I still have him ranked ahead of guys like Fournette, but the thing is, it's close. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that it's an easy choice. I have Kamara just outside those top 5 running backs. I would take Antonio Brown over him. But Kamara gives you that RB1 upside. He legitimately does, because if he gets over those 250 touches, he's probably going to finish as the RB1 because the dude's he's explosive. He plays for probably the best offense in the NFL, I would say, because the Saints offensive line is top 5 now. Drew Brees is still slinging it. He's good enough. They have weapons to take away attention where Alvin Kamara didn't see very many stacked boxes last year. And the reason is because Sean Payton's a phenomenal play caller.
And yet their second wide receivers going like wide receiver 50 in drafts.
Yeah, it's because they're worried about Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara and how many fantasy options can you support?
And Ben Watson. Yeah, I think Cameron Meredith will be just fine. We'll talk about that, I think, on next show because we've got listener hot takes rolling in. Let's move on over to the listener mailbag. You can get these questions in a number of ways. Mailbag@fantasypros.com. You can email us, or you can tweet us at BobbyFantasyPro, at Mike Taglier NFL. And Tags, we have a new voicemail line too, right?
We do. We have a voicemail line, and that's the thing is, sometimes Bobby and I have been slacking on this. We need to mention it more because when we do mention it, you guys leave in calls. So if you're going to hear some calls today, actually, that are from like a week and a half ago, and so if you left a voicemail, hey, it might be on here next week. Who knows? But the phone number to call in and leave a voicemail to potentially get on the show is 209-881-PROS. And remember, just leave your name, where you're from, and then a question. And the question, we don't want it to be about a keeper league, guys, because that doesn't apply to everybody. You're going to hear some questions today. These are perfect questions for us to talk about and give you an idea as to, what we're looking for.
All right, so here's the first 2 questions, then we'll move on to the voicemail ones. This one's from Joel in Tampa. Which running back outside the top 4, between Le'Veon Bell, Todd Gurley, Zeke, and David Johnson, has the best chance to finish in the top 3 running backs? So basically, who's the safest?
Saquon Barkley, hands down. I think we already hit that on the show, though, about my love and why I like Saquon Barkley so much.
Yeah, I would say number 2 behind him is probably Leonard Fournette. I think it's Leonard Fournette is top 5 for sure, positive he's top 5 if he stays healthy. The question mark is if he stays healthy. Barkley, we have no reason to be concerned about his durability. So, yeah, I would probably say Barkley too, with Fournette just outside of him. What do you think, James?
Yeah, Alvin Kamara, we talked about too. He's got to be in that conversation. I know his efficiency last year was just through the roof, and for the regression folks out there, I'm sure a lot of people are going to say, "Well, he just can't maintain that level of efficiency." First of all, I'm not sure just because he looked that studly last year, but yeah, this is a guy, again, we talk about, if he gets the requisite amount of volume, he could absolutely shatter the RB1 potential for sure.
Let me ask you guys this, though. Of those top 4 guys, Gurley, Bell, Elliott, Johnson, which one of them is the safest, like the biggest lock to finish in the top 3 tags?
Oh, it's not even close for me. Like, the thing is like, I like Le'Veon Bell, and if you were to tell me that I was guaranteed he'd be on the field for 16 games and that he wouldn't be punished at all like he was, early in the season last year, I'd say he's in that conversation for sure. But Gurley, I mean, what is not to like? This offensive line was so good last year. They added more pieces in the draft to add depth, where if they have an injury on the offensive line, they have some backup now. They added Brandon Cooks to stretch the field. Like, did you know Todd Gurley, he was like it was the bottom 5 in terms of how many 8+ defenders in the box he saw last year. And the reason is because they run so many 3 wide receiver sets that you cannot throw an extra defender in the box because you're forced to defend one of their 3 wide receivers. And oh wait, they lose Sammy Watkins and they replace him with Brandon Cooks. That's not really so bad. And then on top of that, they rebuilt the entire defense. It's like literally a Pro Bowl team on defense. It might take some time for them to get their true stride on defense because there's so many new moving pieces. But when you have all those guys, it's like they're not going to be involved in many shootouts. They're going to be in a lot of leads. Todd Gurley is so safe. And I know it's unlikely for a running back to finish number 1 year over year, but we're talking most likely Todd Gurley.
Here's my problem. Jared Goff only threw the ball 477 times last year. That's not going to happen again.
Why change it?
Well, I think you think about the personality of Sean McVay. I think that might be a reason why they might open it up a little bit for Goff. And Goff, too, was a second-year player last year. Now, okay, look, that being said, can I just full disclosure, I'm a Cal guy, and I love Jared Goff. So, take whatever I say about Jared Goff with a grain of salt, folks. But yeah, no, listen, man. I mean, look, top draft pick, young guy. He can, if McVay wanted to, throw the ball a little bit more. I'm actually surprised he threw the ball so not so often last year. That's interesting to me. Talking about Todd Gurley, by the way, there were some efficiency warning signs last year because, again, I did a lot of next-gen stats last year, and we talk about this metric called yards gained after close. And this is basically when a defender gets to within 1 yard of a runner, how many yards do they pick up after that defender closes in? They also have a metric called yards gained before close. Now, this is truly an offensive line run blocking metric, all right? This is how many yards does the offensive line gain before a defender gets to within the ball carrier. For Todd Gurley, his metric in yards gained after close, again, a running back elusiveness measure, he was very average. And I think we've seen that too.
Interesting.
Throughout his career. He had a 3.97 yards gained after close number. Now, that is, and again, I know this is not a metric that a lot of folks are familiar with, but that's pretty average, man. I mean, he was in the same vein as Marlon Mack, CJ Anderson, and Marshawn Lynch, who, again, had a terrible first 7 weeks of the season and a fantastic last 7 weeks of the season. So, in terms of efficiency, Todd Gurley wasn't that great. Now, here's the thing. Now, you're saying, well, wait a second now. You look at, yards per carry, he was through the roof. Well, that's because his offensive line was just road graders up front. His offensive line generated one of the league best per run for Todd Gurley, 0.72 yards per carry. The offensive line generated before a defensive player got to within 1 yard of Todd Gurley. Look, man, that number 0.72 is so unbelievably high. We're talking about where league average might be like 0.3. So to get 0.7 is just unbelievable. That number has to come down in 2018. It just has to. I don't see it. There's no way they sustain that for Todd Gurley. And I think the efficiency numbers might reflect that in 2018. Those are just two little red flags for a great player in Todd Gurley, who's playing in a great offense with a great offensive mind in Sean McVay. Just two little red flags for Todd Gurley. So I don't know. For me, I really like Le'Veon Bell. And again, we talk about, the risk reward with the health and all those things, but I don't know, man. He's basically LaDainian Tomlinson to me. And
he's so good. Yeah.
He's so good, man. So it's hard for me to bet against that man.
Did you know he's never finished as the running back number 1 overall?
Is that right?
Never. He's finished 2, 45, 6, and 2.
That's right. So it was Gurley last year. It was David Johnson in 2016.
Interesting.
Who was 2015? Oh, was that the D'Angelo Williams year? I think it was.
Yes, it was.
Wow, yeah, that's true. It's crazy.
Yeah, 2015 was Devontae Freeman.
And Freeman. Okay, yeah, but that's the year that Bell was hurt, though, I think.
That's right. And I think Williams was number 2 overall, even though he only played, 12 games? He was amazing in this offense. All right, next one, Eric from North Carolina. He says, just wondering, what are some of your ideas to establish draft order? Like, do you guys have any creative, good, bad ways to build your draft order? And the way I like to do it is don't draw a name out of the hat or something. Like, go play miniature golf. Whoever does it. Or like, I saw somebody do it like this way where they simulated WWE. They put in 12 guys on a video game and they broadcasted it live. And so everyone's rooting for their player on this video game where no one's actually playing. Do something really creative. The reason I want to bring up this question is because it can be like not as much of an event as your draft day, but something really fun. Tags, do you have any ideas?
I think it's fun to do reverse. So basically like an NBA style lottery, because like if you do start doing skill things, like my friends might be like, oh, Mike, you golf more than we do, so you're going to win this competition and you don't need the high pick. So basically like I like to do it in a way where there's some luck involved, but it creates excitement. So I like to do like an NBA style lottery where it's like you basically, the guy who finished last place last year, he deserves, 50 little tickets inside the ball. And then you get to 9th place, they get 40 tickets, 30. And then you move it down like a lottery, like an NBA style lottery, where it just kind of evens out the playing field just a little bit, and it creates some excitement about the draft order, because even though you finish last, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the first pick.
Do you have any ideas, James?
I gotta be honest with you, man. I really like the idea of a video game tournament. Like, how about if we had a Mario Kart tournament?
Yeah.
Oh, give me a Mario Kart tournament where the tournament winner gets the number 1, or he gets to pick whatever draft pick he wants.
Can you imagine the pressure?
That would be awesome. Oh my god!
Like if you're playing Super Smash Brothers and you get Falcon punched, you would lose it, man. So yeah, that sounds like a blast.
Give me a Smash Brothers tournament. Oh my god, that would be amazing. We'll fire up the old N64, do a little GoldenEye. Let's do that.
That's what I'm talking about.
Hell yeah.
All right, guys. So here's the first voicemail question. This one's from Scott in Chicago, and here you can take a listen.
Hey, Bobby and Tags. This is Scott from Chicago, winner of last year's Listener League. I just had a quick question about 2 wide receivers I'm struggling a bit with, Juju Smith-Schuster and Brandon Cooks. I just don't understand the intense hype for Juju in the fantasy community and everyone calling for Brandon Cooks to be a bust when I see their situations as very similar, both on high-powered offenses with lots of weapons, including an elite running back who catches passes out of the backfield. Big Ben is obviously a better real-life quarterback than Jared Goff, but we know he's statistically insignificant for fantasy. And we don't have any reason to believe Goff won't make strides in year 2 under McVay. Also, Cooks is the number 1 in LA, and Juju has Antonio Brown to deal with. So what are your thoughts on these 2 wide receivers? Thanks so much for your help. Bye.
Yeah, and James, we'll let you answer this one first. What do you think about the difference between Juju and Brandon Cooks? Like, why is Brandon Cooks being so underhyped here?
Well, I mean, last year he had a very solid season, and obviously he played in a terrific offense. Now he goes from the Patriots, goes to the Rams, and you figure, okay, well, he's going from one high-powered offense to another high-powered offense. Well, the problem being, though, is that the true number 1 wide receiver in the Rams offense last year, the deep downfield guy was Sammy Watkins, right? And however you want to look at it, let's at least be honest with ourselves and say, at worst, the talent level is comparable. The skill sets are similar. I personally think from just a pure talent standpoint, obviously not injury related, but talent standpoint, Sammy Watkins, the more complete receiver. That being said, Sammy Watkins last year, man, he couldn't crack 600 yards. And I get that he got...
He didn't have the whole offseason to learn the playbook.
Right. I was just about to say he got dropped in late in that process. Brandon Cook's going to have a full off season to work with that, complicated McVay offense. He's going to have a full off season, we would think, to build some kind of rapport with Jared Goff as well. So I'm not saying Brandon Cooks is going to be a 600-yard guy. That being said, I mean, realistically, I think you could cap it. I think his absolute ceiling, Brandon Cooks, is 1,100 yards. Now, he might hit double-digit touchdowns, get to 1,100 yards. That might be very possible given that offense. But I just think that role in that offense where the guys, playing the X receiver, streaking deep downfield, taking the top off the defense, it's just, this is a quick hitter offense. They're going to use, Robert Woods a lot. They're going to use Cooper Kupp a lot. I just don't think the target share is going to be there for Brandon Cooks. That's just my thing. Now, Juju Smith-Schuster is, you're right. He's the number 2 wide receiver, but there were games last year, guys, where he wasn't the number 2 wide. He was the number 1 wide receiver. You know what I'm saying? So there's going to be games just based off of coverage and just the high-powered and high-scoring, high-volume nature of the Pittsburgh offense where Juju, even as a number 2, I think his floor is 1,100 yards. So that's kind of where I see the discrepancy. And I really love the value right now for Juju. You can get him in the 5th, 6th round. Sign me up for that all day long, because I think this is a guy, again, where I think you could lock him up for 1,000 yards. I think you could lock him up for 6 to 8 touchdowns, but the upside is truly exciting to me. I think this is a guy that, if everything breaks right for him, can be a 1,300 yard, 8 to 10 touchdown guy. Now, everything has to go right there, but the upside certainly is tantalizing.
Listen to this game log on Juju, okay? From October 29th on, 7 games. 193 yards and a touchdown, 97 and a touchdown, 114, 75 and a touchdown, 143 and a touchdown. Now, he had 2 not-so-great games in there, but he still had 8 targets and 5 targets. They're going to use this guy. The difference with Brandon Cooks, like I said, Jared Goff only threw the ball 477 times. Robert Woods, by the way, is still there. If you move his 12 games out to 16, he would have had nearly 1,100 receiving yards, and he's got to compete with Robert Woods. So, yeah, I like Juju better. I like Brandon Cooks this year, but man, Juju's hard to beat. By the way, we got something. So we're doing this listener hot takes episode here, and somebody sent this one in. Brandon Cooks finishes the season with 75 receptions, 1,130 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And then he says, wait, that's not a hot take. Those are his averages over the last 3 years.
Yeah, no, Brandon Cooks has also been playing with Tom Brady and Drew Brees, so I'm not going to sit here and say that doesn't matter, because it does. It's an interesting conversation, because I pulled up my projections as you guys were talking, and I have Juju Smith-Schuster down for 918 yards and 6 touchdowns, and I have Brandon Cooks down for 921 yards and 6 touchdowns. So they're both neck and neck for me. I think it comes down to the league you play in. Is it a PPR format? I think I'd prefer Juju. If it's a standard format, maybe Cooks. And talking about the upside with Juju, I think it would require an injury to Antonio Brown in order for him to vault into the 1,000-yard territory. And maybe not 1,000-yard, but
he had one last year, yeah.
Towards the end of last year when Antonio Brown got hurt, that's when you saw Juju for 114 yards, 75 yards and a touchdown, 143 yards and a touchdown. So, you saw a big chunk come over over the final part of the season, and that's what people remember, right? Is because Juju kind of took off then. The issue here is that some people are saying, well, and Martavis Bryant's gone. The issue is that James Washington might be better than Martavis Bryant, and they're already talking about the fact that James Washington has walked in and impressed. He's such a good deep ball threat. And the thing is, Juju, I like Juju coming in. I didn't think he'd finish as a top 20 wide receiver in his rookie season. But the thing is when Antonio Brown's there, it's going to cap the ceiling for another player on that team, just because Antonio Brown demands 160 targets. You're targeting him 10 times a game. That's just happening by default. So I think Juju's ceiling is probably 100 targets, because there were no 2 teammates last year who saw more than 110 targets. So Antonio Brown's getting there. So if Juju can't get to 110 targets, I wonder how high that ceiling really is. Whereas Brandon Cooks, even though I think that he's going to end up around that 100, 105 target mark, I think there is a ceiling for a little bit more if they decide to move away from Cooper Kupp or whatever and go play a little deeper. So this is tough, man. I have them both in the same tier. I guess I'd say that Cooks in a nutshell I would likely prefer, but And to answer the listener's question, by the way, it's because Antonio Brown is with the Steelers. Even though Ben Roethlisberger is a better quarterback than Jared Goff, Brandon Cooks doesn't have to deal with Antonio Brown. Juju does.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm looking at my rankings. I actually have Cooks higher, so I told you guys that I like Juju more, but I have Cooks higher. Juju, over the second half of the season, those final 8 games, everyone thinks he was so amazing. He finished as the wide receiver 20 in those 8 games behind guys like Keelan Cole, Marquise Goodwin, Devin Funchess, Jamison Crowder.
He did miss a game in there, though. He did miss a game where those guys played.
Yeah, you're right. He did miss a game. So if he doesn't miss that game, he's what, wide receiver 15?
Yeah, 13, 15.
Yeah. I have Brandon Cooks as my wide receiver 15.
Yeah, I have them both in the wide receiver 18 to 22 range, like just depending on the day. That's where those two belong for me.
All right, here's the next one, guys.
Hey, guys, this is Cam from Baton Rouge. Love the show. I'm in a dynasty league, standard scoring, and I already have Corey Clement on my roster. I'm looking at trading for Jay Ajayi, but everyone seems to be relatively low on him, and I don't really understand why. He's averaged 4.5 yards per carry throughout his career, 5.8 yards per carry when he was with the Eagles last year, and he's running behind PFF's top-graded offensive line, and what expects to be a pretty high-scoring offense. Am I missing something? Thanks.
So, James, we'll let you go first on this one again.
Yeah, I absolutely love Jay Ajayi, and I think we're starting to see his ADP climb. You know what's really funny? I honestly think people don't follow the NFL that as closely when they're doing some of these mocks, right? Because you start to think like, you're like, oh yeah, Jay Ajayi, it's a crowded backfield. It's like, no, it's not. You know, it's like LeGarrette Blount's gone. He got the vast majority of the work. Jay Ajayi in Philadelphia got dropped in literally mid-season. This is a guy that last year for Philadelphia was just incredible. And he was a big playmaker on a high-scoring offense. He's going to be the lead back. I like Corey Clement too as a sleeper. I really, really do. And as a matter of fact, I think he has a place on your roster in redraft or hell, even in best ball. I love Corey Clement. Give me Corey Clement. But Jay Ajayi to me profiles as the lead dog. And again, I know his ADP was somewhere in the 50s to start the summer, but we're starting to really see that climb as people start thinking about his role. And really, again, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but I really just honestly believe people didn't know that LeGarrette Blount left that team. I really do. So I think as people start to see the depth charts come out, Jay Ajayi to me is, and again, we talk about that yards gained after close metric. He was one of the most elusive running backs in the NFL last year was Jay Ajayi. So sign me up for that. That's the guy that I want to target, especially later in my draft when I go wide receiver heavy.
Now, here's another thing that I think a lot of people are forgetting. You can point to the game log when, he got to the team, he had to learn the playbook. He only had 8 touches. He had 8 touches, 6, 12. Then he got up to 16, 14, 16 in the final weeks of the season. So everyone's going to say, well, he was never a bell cow or anything like that then. You look at the playoffs, he had 18 touches. He had 21 touches against the Falcons and the Vikings. So I don't know, man. I think that they're planning on using him a lot more than most people are thinking. Tags, what do you think, man?
I'm going to disagree with both of you guys on this one. So he's another player that I've been doing a lot of research on because, I always try and prove myself wrong in the fact that, Darren Sproles, if you guys aren't aware, Darren Sproles got hurt last year. He's returned to the team. Now, here's the thing. Darren Sproles, some people are like, oh, he's old. Reports out of camp are that he looks exactly like the player that he was when he got hurt last year. So here's the thing. Darren Sproles doesn't come back to sit on the bench. He would have retired. So if he makes this team, that's a real problem. And the reason I say that is because Doug Peterson has now coached 32 games in the regular season. There's only been 4 instances where a running back has received more than 43 snaps. Every single time it was Darren Sproles, who actually got up to 60 and 61 in there. Okay, so here's the thing.
Wow, man. Great stat.
So I went through and I looked at the snaps per game for all the top running backs last year, looking at the top 10 running backs, what was the common thing? The only person that had under 35.6 snaps per game was Alvin Kamara. And we know that efficiency is just not going to keep up, right? So that's an issue. The offensive line is great, but here's the thing. Under Doug Peterson, on average, we're looking at about 23.6, 23.7 carries per game in this offense. Of the running backs that have played for him, LeGarrette Blount, Jay Ajayi, Ryan Matthews, none of them have averaged more than 11.9 carries per game in that time. So when you start talking about, Corey Clement being a potential player, being mixed in, when you talk about Darren Sproles coming back for his final season, the experience that he has in Doug Peterson's offense, all these things combined, I'm not saying Jay Ajayi is going to be bad, but I think that we've seen if he doesn't get those carries, we don't know how good he's going to be. You talked about his yards per carry. If you remove, legitimately, if you talk about those games where he didn't play against the Bills back in 2016, where he had the 200-yard games, his yards per carry goes from 4.51 over his career down to 3.95. So it's not, I'm not removing those games just saying, oh, he's automatically bad. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying outside of those games, he's been somewhat mediocre, relying on volume quite a bit. So yes, in the playoffs, it reminds me of last year because LeGarrette Blount, if you guys remember, Blount was drafted as a top 30 guy for the Eagles last year because of the same reason. He was coming in. He was the clear workhorse. There's no way that Darren Sproles and Corey Clement and Wendell Smallwood, that these guys are going to steal roles. They did as the year went on, and you never saw Blount get snaps. Now, Jay Ajayi is a much better receiver than LeGarrette Blount ever was, but I just don't think Jay Ajayi is a generational talent where he's going to force Doug Peterson to change his entire offense.
He did in the playoffs, though. But here's the thing. I'm going to play both sides of the fence here. Here's the guys who finished ahead of Ajayi last year. Ajayi played he played 14 games, okay? C.J. Anderson, Frank Gore, Latavius Murray, Bilal Powell, Buck Allen, Orleans Darkwa, Jamal Williams, Isaiah Crowell. Guys, Jay Ajayi finished just the running back 33 last year.
He's one of 3 running backs since 2014 to receive over 200 carries and not finish top 24. The others, Isaiah Crowell last year and Alfred Morris back in 2015. That's it. Those are the only 3 running backs who failed to finish top 24, and he finished number 33 with 208 carries. So
it was such a disaster in South Beach that, obviously it just that weighed him down quite a bit. I'm really excited to see what an entire season under Doug Peterson might look like for Jay Ajayi. But yeah, I think a lot of the concerns that you bring up, certainly valid. I just can't wrap my mind around a 36-year-old running back coming off of a major injury.
No.
Playing a role in this offense. I would be sick to my stomach if that was the case. But man, I tell you what, if there's going to be somebody who does it, it's going to be Darren Sproles, because that dude is a little bit of a superhuman, man. So, yeah, I could see it. Yeah,
but hold on a second. If Darren Sproles is cut for whatever reason, if they just say, Darren, we appreciate everything you've done, and if they cut him, I will literally go back and I will change a lot of my projections here. But if he makes the team, that means they're playing him. He's going to be on the field,
or he's just a special teams guy.
No, he's not coming back for a final season. No.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Okay,
that's the thing. Another thing with Ajayi, I believe he's being drafted as people expecting that him to be the workhorse. I think people are expecting it by drafting him as the number 17 running back. If I could get him as like the RB 25, I feel like there's some room for growth there. But with his price right now, it's already baked in. It's already basically people saying that, oh, he's the lead back, and I'm not really worried about it. I am worried about it.
I think I'm just going to go back to ignoring that Jay Ajayi exists, because I cannot deal with all of these arguments in my mind. I don't know which way to go. Yeah. I'm just going to draft Marshawn Lynch there and be really pumped up because he was so good in the second half. Their offensive line's improved.
For the record, I would not draft Marshawn Lynch over Jay Ajayi. I just want to be clear on that.
Okay. Well, I would, and I'm going to.
I think Doug Martin steals that job.
No.
What? No, I will fight you. No.
That's a hot take from me. I think that
Doug
is
Martin, a super hot take.
I think Doug Martin ends up taking that job.
Wow, dude.
The funny thing about that is
you are the hot take guy.
I would argue the exact. I've actually gone on a podcast or my former podcast and said there is a 0% chance that Doug Martin takes that job. I literally have said there's a 0% chance. So that is funny, man.
Oh, it is.
You know what I would love is if Marshawn Lynch and the muscle hamster Doug Martin got in the ring together and wrestled. Those guys are so strong. That would be amazing.
It would be.
Lynch wins.
Hey, by the way, I named all those guys who finished ahead of Ajayi last year. You know who else they finished ahead of? Joe Mixon, who was tied with Ajayi. We don't need to get into that, though, Tags. Okay, we'll save that for
I'm not
another
even going there with you today, Bobby.
Yeah. All right, man. Final. All right, and here's the last listener mailbag question. This one's also a voicemail.
Hey, Tags. Hey, Bobby. This is Noah calling from Marshall, Michigan. I'm in a 2-quarterback league. When is best to start drafting a quarterback in a league like that? If you're going high and early, who are you taking? How early? And if it's better to wait, who are you taking and how late? Thanks a lot, guys. Love the show.
I mean, for a 2-quarterback league, Look, there's two different philosophies, okay? Which is you could take a quarterback, late in the first round. That's fine if it's going to be an Aaron Rodgers. That being said, I think a lot of industry folks still like to wait a little bit longer than most, casual fans might think in a 2 QB league. I've played in a few industry leagues where we played 2 quarterback or super flex or whatever it might be. And you really start seeing quarterbacks go off the board 6th, 7th round. And if you miss there, you're still going to wait until the double-digit rounds. Now, I've seen guys wait and wait and wait, and they don't get their first quarterback till, let's say, round 12 or something. And they just kind of piecemeal it together through the year. It depends on how ardent you're going to be just scoping the waiver wire, because, man, that is a tough game to play, mostly because, and I get it, everyone says wait on quarterback, but you got to understand your league and you got to understand yourself. It's easy to say wait on quarterback when you're going to be, you're going to be the guy in your league making 50 roster moves and the next closest guy is making 5. Yeah. Definitely wait on quarterback for sure. But if the roles are reversed where you're like, you know what? I don't want to make that many. I'm going to make 15 moves all year. I don't necessarily say wait on quarterback, because that's one of those things where you really, really have to look at the matchups. You got to really study it and try to pick up guys off the waiver wire. But 2 quarterback league, man, if you're a more casual fan, I really wouldn't wait past round 5.
Tags, I remember last year we were doing a mock draft. And the reason we do these mock drafts is to practice and see, what lessons we can learn from it. And we did a 2 quarterback mock draft, Tags, and I got stuck with, I don't remember who it was, like Joe Flacco and Mike Glennon, because I waited so long and I hated my team. Actually, I think I got Jared Goff in that, which would have worked out pretty well. But we were laughing at me so hard because I had Jared Goff on my roster.
Well, yeah, I mean, in our Fantasy Pros Dynasty Invitational one it's a 2 quarterback league and or a super flex, and JJ Zacharyson went by his strategy. He went late round quarterback, and I think he waited too long because he got to the point where he's like he was starting Tannehill and someone else that was not very good.
He paid his entire fab for.
He tried getting Jay Cutler, and
who played
So he was stuck in a bad spot. So the way I approach 2 quarterback leagues is that you play it by ear and you remain fluid. And I know we've talked about this on the show before, but I'm dead serious. Is that you look at it and you want to make sure that you don't end up, let's say that you're at the end of the second round or the 10th pick in the second round. There's 2 more, and then there's gonna be 2 more. Obviously, you don't need to take a quarterback there, but on that 3rd pick, when you come back around, understand that there's going to be like 20 picks in between yours. And if there's a run of 15 quarterbacks, are you going to be okay with that? Are you going to be okay starting someone like, Andy Dalton as your QB1? Are you okay with that? Me personally, I'm usually drafting both of my quarterbacks by the 5th round. Usually I'll snag one in like the 3rd round and then one in the 5th. And the quarterbacks I typically end up with in those leagues are like an Alex Smith, because you can get him cheap. You grab the quarterbacks who they don't have any risk of losing their starting job. The only reason they're not going to be out there is if they have an injury on the roster. So taking someone like Tyrod Taylor doesn't make sense, because you're going to have to draft a 3rd quarterback just to protect against Baker Mayfield.
Well, you're drafting a 3rd quarterback anyway in 2 quarterback
You
leagues.
are, but I'm saying it's not as important to grab another guy that's starting, because if it's a 12-team league, there's only 32 starters. That means not everybody could have 3. But if you get 2 safe ones, like an Alex Smith and someone like, a Phillip Rivers or a Matt Ryan, I think you're more than okay with those guys.
Isn't that the crazy thing about 2QB Superflex leagues? Like, guys like Lamar Jackson are highly coveted. Guys like Josh Rose and Baker Mayfield, those guys are valuable assets in Superflex leagues. Whereas, in your typical, single quarterback setup, it's like you would never draft those guys.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's crazy, but then it's like, well, how crazy is it that people are drafting Kalen Ballage? You know what I mean? Like, Lamar Jackson is so much more important in the NFL than Kalen Ballage. And I think fantasy football should change in this direction. I love the super flex. I think it becomes standard within 2 or 3 years. That might be
oh no, oh god,
that might be a hot take, but so many people are doing it. All the experts love it. I think it happens.
I hate it. I gotta be honest. I absolutely detest 2 quarterback leagues. Mostly because I think there's an elegant, and I've written about this before, but there's a very elegant way to get around that value discrepancy in real life versus fantasy football. And I get it. In fantasy, you're waiting on quarterback because the point differential between the quarterback 5 and the quarterback 10 is nothing. You got to set up your league where you get 6 points for a passing touchdown and -4 for interceptions. If you do that, it's such a simple, elegant way to create different tiers of quarterback. And if you look at it, and shameless plug, but if you go to NFL.com/co, you go look for my quarterback, or just Google it, James Coe quarterback scoring. I lay out all the arguments why you need to go to a 6-4 scoring format for quarterbacks. And it's just, to me, I don't want to have to draft, and I don't want to have to play somebody like, last year it was Joe Flacco or whatever, the worst quarterback I don't want to do that. It's no fun to me to have to play the worst quarterback in the NFL. It's just not.
I feel the same way about the running backs.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You're not playing those guys. You might be stashing them, but you're not playing them. In a 2 QB setup, you have to play the worst starting quarterback in the NFL.
I mean, we're playing like backup running backs. We're playing like Nyheim Hines is going to be flexed some weeks. He's like the 3rd running back on their team.
I mean, that's the thing. You can work around it.
I just think I want all the quarterbacks playing. Not all of them, but, like most all of them. And I don't know. I really love the 6-4 idea. I've never heard that before. That's awesome. I want it in addition to the Superflex. I want the quarterbacks. I want Aaron Rodgers to be the best player in fantasy football.
If you do it, I guarantee you, in a 2 quarterback setup, 6-4, if you're not taking Aaron Rodgers in the first 5 picks, you're doing something wrong.
Even in a standard Superflex, I think I'd take Rodgers in the top 10. Just because he's so much better than everyone. I don't know if I would take anyone else in the top 2 rounds. Maybe Russell Wilson at the end of the second.
Well, I love Deshaun Watson this year.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
you just open up a big can of worms right at the end of the podcast.
I'm a Deshaun Watson truther, man. I've got him ranked ahead of Aaron Rodgers in 2018.
Oh, man. Okay. You're going to have to share this with our listeners then, because I don't know if they've heard this point of view. We've had a lot of people come on and trash in Watson, but I mean, I want them to hear why it is. Tags and I have Watson pretty low. I want them to hear why it is that somebody does like Watson, because there could clearly be something we're missing here.
Again, in a standard scoring league where you get 4 points for a passing touchdown, -2 for an interception, and 6 points for a rushing touchdown, I think Deshaun Watson, with his legs, gives you a slight bit more than Aaron Rodgers. And again, the rampage that he was on last year, that was something to behold. That was something pretty special. Now, again, is he going to be healthy in 2018? I'm not 100% sure, but dude, let me tell you something, man. Even if he's healthy for 10 games, let me ride that 10 games and I'll just figure out what the hell to do for the final, 4 games of the fantasy season. So for me, this is a guy that has 50 touchdown upside. I know that sounds absolutely insane right now, but can he get there? Gee whiz, I'm not 100% sure. All I know is that he's got Nuke, he's got Will Fuller, and again, he's going to be the guy that is the focal point of this offense. So, and again, why do I bring up the standard scoring format? Well, -2 for an interception, Deshaun Watson is going to have a lot of turnovers. But in standard scoring leagues, you don't get dinged for that. That really doesn't hurt you. I mean, look at Blake Bortles. This is a guy that's consistently a top 10 fantasy quarterback. It doesn't matter how many picks he has. It doesn't matter how many fumbles it has, because in standard scoring leagues, you don't get dinged enough for turnovers. And it just doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, Blake Bortles, the reason he's a top 10 fantasy quarterback is because of the turnover. He sets his team back so far that he needs to then keep the ball in his hands and set up furious rallies in the second half where he's just slinging it all over the field. He's going to pick up 2 garbage touchdowns. Who cares? And he's picking up yardage along the way as well. So Deshaun Watson, to me, even if he has the turnovers, it doesn't matter. As a matter of fact, I think it's a feedback loop where it just goes right back into his hands and he's going to try to score again. So I have him, man. And you know what? We talk about injury concerns. It's interesting to me that no one brings up the Aaron Rodgers injury concern, because look, he's broken his collarbone twice. This is an injury that once you break your collarbone, and he's got plates and screws, and I love Aaron Rodgers. I love him. Again, I'm a Cal guy. I want to name my next kid Aaron Rodgers. That's how much I love Aaron Rodgers. Now, that being said, he comes with a significant injury risk, because of the collarbone breaks, multiple now in his career. So, if you want to kind of sort of conveniently forget about it, I understand. But at the same time, let's at least give Deshaun Watson that same benefit of the doubt as well.
Tags, what do you think, man?
I mean, in the whole injury front, I actually agree with you. I'm actually not so much concerned about Rodgers' collarbone, but more of his concussion history. Because if he suffers another concussion, he's probably to miss multiple games because he's had a lot of them on his resume. And Deshaun Watson, I'm not worried about the ACL. It is his second ACL injury. But at the same time, in modern medicine with ACLs, they don't concern me. I'm not concerned about Allen Robinson. I'm not concerned about Dalvin Cook.
It's like a sprained ankle now.
Yeah. Basically, as long as it didn't happen, 6 months ago, and it didn't. So I'm okay with Deshaun Watson in that aspect. I just think that the defense gets more on track this year. Their offensive line has gotten worse. Trading Dwayne Brown is the most questionable thing that franchise has done in a long time.
What are they doing?
What in the world was that?
No, I don't know. And honestly, when I was going through the draft and preparing for that and predicting what teams were going to do, I know that the Texans didn't have a pick until the third round, but I was like, okay, they're going to have to use it on an offensive lineman. They have to start bunching those up, and they didn't do it. I don't know what they're doing. They're going to get him killed. He does have tremendous talent. I think Kiki QT is actually better than Will Fuller, and I know that's a hot take. But the talent is there. I just don't.
Will Fuller's huge, by the way. He added 15 pounds of muscle.
That's not a good thing for him. Seriously, Will Fuller should never have given up what he excels at, and that's speed. I don't know, man. Deshaun Watson, we know there's some regression. Bobby's brought up the stat a few times where it's Blake Bortles was the top quarterback over the final 5 weeks. It doesn't mean that we're drafting him as such. Deshaun Watson, there's a lot of unknowns where it's if you want to make the argument to take him over someone like Cam Newton, I won't disagree with you because Cam Newton sucks as a passer. But over Aaron Rodgers, who the guy, if he's on the field for 16 games, he's the best quarterback we've ever seen. Legitimately, he's the best quarterback of all time. So I just think that there's too much risk with Watson this year in terms of the defense taking a step forward because they will with J.J. Watt back in the field. Again, that offensive line is brutal. He might be a little less mobile to start the season just because, they might take it a little easy with hits on him to start the season, so that might limit him a little bit. Again, my projections came back, and Deshaun Watson was my number 3 quarterback in projections. So again, projections tell me that his rushing totals are going to get him up there, but I'm building in some facts that there's some severe unknowns here because he essentially did it for 5 games last year, and it's a very, very, very small sample size.
I'd put his over-under at 450 rushing yards. That's a lot for a quarterback. With that said, here's my go-to stat with Watson. He had 19 touchdowns in 7 games, right? That's a 9.3 touchdown rate. If you move that back, if you regress that to Tom Brady's career average, one of the best quarterbacks of all time, I think it's safe to say that Deshaun Watson is not Tom Brady. I guess maybe he could be. I think that would be a hot take. So let's move him back down to 5.5%. If he did that last year, he had 11 touchdowns instead of 19. If you subtract those 8 touchdowns, he had fewer fantasy points per game than Alex Smith.
There's some regression, and
I can't get over that. And coming off the injury and the offensive line going backwards, there's definitely upside. The floor to me it's pretty low. It's a lot lower than Aaron Rodgers.
No, if he plays 16 games, I think his absolute floor is the QB7, QB8. That's what I'd say. His absolute floor.
That's good, yeah.
Because if you rush for 450, 500 yards, you're going to get there, and I expect him to do that. I just expect his passing to regress. I have him at 538 pass attempts, which is I think I was being kind of generous there. So again, I wouldn't fault you again for taking him over someone like Cam Newton, but not over the GOAT Aaron Rodgers.
All right, man. We've got a stat of the day coming up. James, before we let you go, though, I want to ask you, who is one player that you were getting in every single league?
I think it's Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah, baby.
He's going so late. And again, I've seen enough tape, and I also look at the advanced numbers, and this is a guy that last year found his sea legs and he was off and running. The fact that he is going, we're talking 8th, 9th round, it's just too much value there.
Not in my drafts, man. I'm taking him in the 6th. I'm not letting anybody beat me to Marshawn Lynch. He's my number 1 guy too. He's the guy I have on every team.
I mean, that's the thing though. You look at his ADP, that's where he's going. And the mocks I've done, that's where he's going. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just because there's a tight end run right before him or a quarterback run right before him or whatever it is. But, and again, we're also in 2018 now where everyone's going super running back heavy early. And I think those middle rounds where you're talking 5 to 9, I think those are rounds where a lot of folks are looking for wide receivers now. And that's kind of why you're starting to see, and especially because, again, PPR heavy, concepts, it's just, people are discounting Marshawn Lynch even more. So I think 8th round is probably about right for Marshawn. And again, as you mentioned, I'll grab him in the 7th just to make sure that I get him, mostly because I'm still going wide receiver heavy on the top of my draft. I don't know why. It's just how it's been shaken out recently.
Tags, if Doug Martin steals this job, James and I are going to come after you. We're going to be mad.
No. Here's the good news, guys, is that Marshawn Lynch is being valued very poorly right now. I mean, the thing is I think you could draft both of them and know that you're going to have a producer every single week. I'm okay with that.
I like Doug Martin.
I think they're cheap. I think they're cheap enough, and I don't think Doug Martin's ever run behind an offensive line that's as good as the Raiders is in terms of run blocking. So, let me give you the stat of the day real quick. And it's funny, James, we didn't give this to you, obviously, but you mentioned something about it actually earlier in the show, which was what are the odds? The stat of the day is that, did you know there were just 2 wide receivers who caught 10 or more touchdowns last year? That number in 2016 was 5. In 2015, it was 10. In 2014, there were 11 wide receivers who caught double-digit touchdown. This could be the reason we're seeing more and more drafters go RB heavy, as there are fewer workhorse wide receivers.
Workhorse wide receivers.
That's basically what it comes down to, is just that we're starting to see less and less. And I think it could be because of the 3 wide receiver sets, 4 wide receiver sets that a lot of teams are moving to.
And passing to all the running backs.
It's pretty crazy to see that number down at 2, considering it was 11 and 10 just a couple of years ago.
I think an argument could be made, and I've certainly heard this, that we might see that kind of go back.
I agree.
To more standard levels that we've seen in the past. I think 2017 was just, I don't know, man. Maybe it was just a weird year. I don't know. It might have just been one of those things, So, yeah, man. And again, especially given Aaron Rodgers coming back, hopefully for a full season. Deshaun Watson, hopefully for a full season. Andrew Luck is back in the fold, baby. Let's go. So yeah, who knows? I mean, we got some signal callers getting healthy here. Boy, I tell you what, man, I'd be very surprised if that's what we saw again in 2018. Just 2 wide receivers get double digits. I think we'll get back to the levels that we saw previously.
Hey, by the way, I want to throw this in, guys. Doug Martin has played 2 full seasons. He finishes the running back 2 and the running back 3. If this guy is on, oh man, he could be a monster. So yeah, he's my favorite backup running back to get right now. There's a couple others I really like, but sorry for jumping in and out of that conversation. I had to share that stat though.
No, yeah, that's fine. No, and James, I like how you said that. You see the game maybe turning back around. By the way, in 2015. There were 15 teams who threw the ball more than 600 times. 2016, that number went down to 6. 2017, there were just 3 teams that threw the ball more than 600 times.
Wow, guys.
Yeah, so we talk about it becoming a passing league, but the last few years it's been regressing a little bit, but I would expect somewhat of a bounce back and more quarterbacks to get over that 600 pass attempt mark.
All right, guys. Well, that's all for today's show. James, as always, thank you for coming on. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, man, absolutely. Anytime.
And thanks to the sponsors of today's show, TeamStake.com. If you're tired of hassling friends and family for fantasy entry fees, try TeamStake.com. And thanks also to Draft.com, where you can do best ball leagues. You can do live drafts for DFS weekly leagues. Go to Draft.com/pros, and you'll get a free $3 entry if you deposit. Plus, money back guarantee up to $100 if you don't like their service. Again, that's Draft.com/pros. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening and enjoy your football.
I just wanted you to watch me dissolve.